essay in Monopoly competition called Competition Except Where Prohibited by Law. And the second essay question is going to be extra credit. It's called Advertising by Israel Kirzner. That's his name, Israel Kirzner. It's called Advertising. Those are 2 extra credit questions on this exam. You want to read those, write them in your own words. It's acceptable sentences, just so you know what we're talking about. Okay. And your third test is the most important test. It's 25%. And of course, on Monday, when we finish the material for the Wednesday class, we'll still probably have about half an hour, and I'll tell you draw a line. Everything after that line is on your final. Everything before that line is on the third test. So I'll tell you where to cut off. Okay. We're talking about the economics of information that George Stigler gives us in 1961. Information is not a free good, it's scarce. And there's opportunity costs to acquiring, processing, disseminating information. And there's gains from searching so we can make better decisions. Mistakes can be costly. We also know that there's institutions that have a comparative advantage in the production of scarce information. It's kind of what they do best. Acquire, process, and disseminate scarce information. We talked about middle persons, brokers, retailers, and I believe we went through the graph of the bank. Right? Banks are financial intermediaries, so bringing together depositors and borrowers, and they're coordinating the savers that make deposits with the borrowers who take out those deposits and loans. And the problem is there's information costs. All of the savers don't know the borrowers don't know the savers, but they both know the bank. And the bank's going to coordinate them. In doing so, they'll raise the interest rate that they pay to depositors on their deposited money. So this is like a producer surplus of savings. This is the saver's gain. So the cost of funds in this case might be 4% over $20,000. Then with that amount of quantity of loanable funds, they'll figure out what the market will bear, the highest demand curve, and that sets the interest rate charged to all the borrowers on that demand curve. And so in this example, Abe would pay 10% if he had to get the $10,000, but he's only going to pay the market rate interest 8. This person might pay 9, but he only pays 8. So that's like consumer surplus. That's the borrower. Their gains. So you've got a cost of funds of 4, a revenue of all those funds of 8, if everyone pays their loans on time and doesn't default. You've got a gross spread of 4%. But the coordination of these people with those people require loan processing. So to go through this, you have administrative expenses or operating costs of the bank. You've got to have the tellers to take the deposits, you have the loan processors to arrange the loans, insurance on your bank, lights, utilities, so forth. So I just put 2% as a kind of cost of loan processing. So now the total cost of running this bank is at 6. Total revenue, if everyone pays, is at 8. This is the net spread. This is the comparative advantage of the bank. That's why banks exist. If information were free and there were no transactions costs, there wouldn't be a spread at all. There would only be one interest rate in the market. And banks wouldn't exist because there would be no need for banks. Are you with me? Banks exist because information is scarce. Someone has to arrange those loans. Someone has to arrange that coordination. And so we went through this. That's the comparative advantage of the bank right there. Now I want to switch gears, and I left you with, I believe, advertising. Advertising. Advertising, and for those of you who are going to go into business, marketing, really pay attention today, things. This is very important for you. Advertising is one of the largest means of disseminating scarce information in every economy. See, advertising makes you aware of what you don't know. See, not all information comes through in the price. There's other things around that price that are needed to understand before you can make the transaction. So advertising provides that mechanism. In every economy, advertising is one of the most important things in that economy. And oftentimes people don't understand this because they're implicitly assuming information is free and costless. But we know it's not. And that's why advertising exists. Now, when you think about this for a moment, remember earlier in the course when we were going through Menger, and I said opportunities for choice that are not perceived do not exist. The mind cannot choose on margins it has not perceived. Right? If you don't perceive an opportunity, that opportunity really doesn't exist until your mind grabs hold of that. It doesn't matter what objective reality is. It matters about the mind approaching the reality as it perceives it. Opportunities for choice do not perceive don't exist until someone perceives it. Now, to understand this, you have to understand about the economics of advertising. And of course, Stigler has now opened up the window for this, for us to understand why advertising exists and what its functional roles are. Now, there's a lot of mythology about advertising. A lot of people have opinions on advertising, but have A, never been in business, and B, don't know what the hell they're talking about. So I'm going to go after some of that mythology right now. One of the things that people will often say is they'll say, well, advertising raises prices. That is incorrect. Advertising always lowers prices. It does not raise them. The people that make that mistake are implicitly assuming information is free and costless. But we know information is scarce and costly. Someone has to produce, process, and disseminate that. Now, why is this? When you think about advertising in business, advertising is a form of competition. Write that down. And it's a way to compete, to tell the consumer what their relevant options are. And if you're in business, you realize you want to reach your consumer and you're going to put your best deals in front of them. Why would you put your best deals for the consumer in your advertisements? Because you're trying to bring them into your company, right? Trying to get them into your business. So notice, when someone is advertising a discounted product, they're telling the consumers of this deal, the price has been reduced, right? You're telling them, here's a deal. Now, if you think about this, this is really important for competition. Why? Because without the consumer knowing what their options are, they're hostage to their own ignorance. You see, what advertising does is destroy informational monopoly and monopoly prices. It destroys it because it gives the consumer more options to know what the price discounts are, what's on sale, what's not on sale, and so forth. So when you're in business, like I was, and you're spending a lot of money on advertising, you're going to try and put your best deals out there for the consumer. Get them to come into your business. So notice what they're doing. They're paying money to do what? Reduce the price and put it out in front of the customer. Now, if you look at that for a moment, you say, well, how does that necessarily help me? Okay, let's say you see an advertisement. Maybe Jiffy Lube has a sale on oil changes. And they say, this week, oil changes are $29.95. Are you with us? So now you see that price in an ad on TV or somewhere. And let's say you go in to get an oil change somewhere else, let's say Meineke or Goodyear or some other place. And you say, I want an oil change. And they say $59.99. But you already heard $29.99 at Jiffy Lube. Where are you going to be going to get your oil change? Jiffy Lube. Because you say, now I know I have other options than $59.99. I'm aware there's someone that's got a cheaper price down the street. I'm going to that one. Which then forces them all to do what? To offer the discount and put that out there and support that price. Okay, so if you didn't see that advertisement, or it was never allowed, what might you have actually done? You might have paid the $59.99 thinking that's the only available alternative. When in reality, there was a sale that you missed. If you didn't know about it. Opportunities for choice are not perceived do not exist. Once you understand this and you understand advertising benefits the consumer. Always. It's a benefit to the consumer. Because the suppliers are telling you what they're reducing their prices on, and that's a form of competition, which destroys informational barriers. And anytime there's a barrier, there's monopoly. Right behind that barrier. Okay, now see, a lot of times what's happening in advertising is not just the price. A lot of times it's about the existence of the product. Where you can get it, and that it even exists. Now if I said to you, bread, 10 cents a loaf, go get it. You might say to me, well that sounds like a good price, but where do I go get it at? See, there's more information you need, like location, times, different things like that, right? Advertising tells you these other things associated with that price, right? Now, a lot of times what advertising is really about is just to catch your attention. Trying to say, I'm here to serve your needs. Now, why is that so important? In an economy like the U.S. economy, there's an estimated over 1 billion different economic goods and services that you can buy in this country. Over 1 billion different things with different prices. Now, on any given day, thousands of products leave the market because no one's buying them. Consumers aren't there. And on any given day, thousands of new products are entering the market all across the whole system. Now, how would you know what is new if the producers of those things don't advertise to you and tell you we're here? You wouldn't know. You'd be hostage to your own ignorance. See, it'd have to be freak accident. You happen to be in a location right there where the product is and it's new and you happen to be there. So let's say I make mouse traps, ethical mouse traps. Maybe you're a PETA person. You got rats in your house. You want to get rid of the rats, but you don't want to get rid of the mice. And I say, okay, I have PETA mouse traps. They catch the mice. They don't kill them. And you can go release them out in the woods and let them be free. Are you with me so far? Yeah. How would you be able to buy my mouse traps unless you knew I had mouse traps that were that way? You wouldn't. It'd have to be a freak accident. You're somewhere where I'm selling them. And you notice, oh, those mouse traps don't, cut the heads of the mice off. Just catch the mice. Huh. Yeah. So the old adage where they say if you have a better mouse trap, the world will be to path to your door, that's not correct. The consumer has to know where the door is to go to. And advertising is telegraphing to the consumer, I'm here. If you have needs for these things, I've got them now. And now you can serve their needs on your terms. Are you with me so far? This is what advertising is, trying to get your attention. And so you look at this and you say most of what advertising is really to get you to slow down and just pay attention long enough to see that there's something that's new that serves your needs. If they didn't advertise those products, wouldn't you have to go to store after store, department store after department store, business after business, and look at all of their inventory all the time to see what's new? You don't have enough time in your life for that. Trust me. There's over 1 billion different things in the economy that you can buy. And on any given day, there might be 10,000 new things out there. You have no clue unless someone is informing you that they're here now to serve your needs. So it's an alertness to opportunity. We're saying here's an opportunity to serve your need. That's why it serves the consumer. It's an alertness to sales discounts. We're reducing the price on this. You need to take that into consideration. You get a better deal here. And that's a mechanism for competition. The people who like to condemn advertising don't understand that advertising benefits the consumer. It's a form of competition. It lowers prices and it opens up your opportunities as a consumer. You cannot choose on margins you cannot perceive. That's just a rule of economics that Menger gave us long ago. Now, we can go a little further. There are other things that people talk about in advertising that is wrong. I hear people say, well, advertising is a waste of resources, social waste of resources. Whenever I hear that, I listen to people, I think, you've never been in business. You don't know what you're talking about. These are usually academics in their little ivory tower, not in the real world. And you say, okay, so you're saying it's a waste of resources. Okay, so without advertising, what's your options? See, if you implicitly assume every consumer on the planet has the mind of God, they know everything. Everything is available, every price, well, then you wouldn't need advertising, but I don't make that assumption. Because I know as a consumer, I don't have all this information myself. Neither would anybody else. So they're ignoring Stigler's point that information is scarce. That's why people acquire, process, and distribute. And then they'll switch the argument. And they'll say, well, but isn't some advertising misleading or fraudulent? Of course there's some advertising that's misleading or fraudulent. No one disputes that. I don't dispute that. See, look, when you think about fraudulent advertising, false advertising, right? That does happen occasionally, but that doesn't condemn advertising. That condemns fraudulent advertisers that don't tell the truth. See, there's fraud in every walk of life, isn't there? That's not unique to advertisers. There's frauds in academics. There's frauds in religion. There's frauds in politics. I mean, that's not all politics seems to be. This is nothing unique to advertising. Right? Now, think about false advertising. One of the old tactics of false advertising, fraud, was something called bait and switch. How many know what I'm talking about? See, it's where they bait you with the artificially low price they're not going to defend and support. And then once you get in, then they try and sell you something different. Old tactic used by people that like to commit fraud. Now, the bait and switch, so maybe I say, I got bread, 10 cents a loaf. When it's normally $2. People say, wow, look at that price. I'm going in to get bread at 10 cents a loaf. And maybe they get there and say, I'm having bread at 10 cents a loaf. And you say, did you have any bread at 10 cents a loaf? Maybe I had 5 loaves of bread at 10 cents a loaf. And you say, how many did you normally sell on any given day at $2 a loaf? Well, maybe I sell 100 a day. So you had less available for sale at this artificially cheap price than you did at the higher price. Yeah, that's called fraud. That's what that's called. Right? That's just called fraud. Bait and switch. This is a breach of contract in advance. Another way of saying, like stealing. You're stealing the consumer's time, effort. You make it a promise you do not intend to keep. Now, mistakes can happen. There are sincere mistakes. Maybe the advertiser printed up the ad, left off a zero. Right? So 10 cents, it should have been $1. Right? Those kind of mistakes do happen. Humans are humans. They make mistakes. Or it could be I ordered 500 loaves of bread and they only sent me 5. Maybe there was a supply chain disruption. Mistakes do happen. Usually consumers might ask the next question. They say, well, are you going to have any of this 5-cent bread or 10-cent bread tomorrow? They say no. You say, how about next week? No. Okay. Can you give me a rain check for whenever you do get the bread in, I get it at 10 cents? No. Okay, now the bullshit detector's coming up here. And you say, okay, why don't you do this? You got another loaf of bread, different brand, $2. Why don't you give me that for 10 cents? Do a substitution. If they say, no, we won't do a substitution, that's the moment you realize this isn't some accidental mistake, this is probably fraud. And here's what you do. Here's what I would do. I call the prosecuting attorney right then and there. Right? Because fraud demolishes trust, demolishes markets, because you're basically stealing is what you're doing. You're deliberately sabotaging those consumers to say, come on in, but I'm not going to really honor my promises. And you should go to prison for that. I'm a passionate believer. You commit false advertising, you need to be in jail. I have no tolerance for fraud. Zero tolerance. Now, you might think the prosecutor is the only thing that's going to hurt you, but no, it's actually something else that's going to hurt you. See, when a company does false advertising, bait and switch, they also piss off their customers, don't they? So if you go in and get 10-cent loaf of bread, and you realize there is no bread at 10 cents a loaf, and they really never intended that, and they put a sign in their window, 10-cent bread, you get in there and you say, this ain't an accident, you wouldn't be putting the sign up if there was some mystery. Are you going to get pissed? Did you go there and you say, you're supposed to have it, you don't have it, you're not trying to arrange some other arrangement for me? Yeah. And when you get screwed by people that are cheating you, does that make them happy and want to go back? No. I don't know any human being that says, you lied to me, you wasted my time and effort, I came here for your promise, now you're screwing me, I think I want to shop here some more. Does anyone do that? No. No one in this room would do that. Why do we think anybody outside this room would do that? They wouldn't do it either. They're just like you and me. Yeah. So in other words, when you make your promise, try to honor it. It's not that hard. Or don't make the damn promise. That's not too hard. All right? Be truthful. Now, so people that get pissed off, they're going to talk to people, aren't they? They're going to say to the neighbor or the brother or sister, say, you know, I went down to get that 10-cent loaf of bread. There's no bread there. And they wouldn't give me a rain check. They wouldn't give me a substitution. They start talking. Don't believe when it's too good to be true, because it is not true. Now let's say that company decides, I'm going to play honest. I'm losing my customers. I'm losing my profits. So I got to get them back in and show them I'm going to play fair and honest. So maybe they put bread on sale again, 10 cents a loaf. Are you going to trust their advertisements? You're going to say, you lied to me before, I do not believe a damn word you say, and you're not getting my trust back that easy. Are you with me? Now, every penny they spend on advertising is down a rabbit hole. It gets no effect whatsoever, because the advertisement is not communicating valuable information, because the consumer is discounting everything you say. So if you commit bait and switch, you're going to go to jail where you belong. And you're going to end up in bankruptcy court where you belong. It's never good to lie to people and cheat people, to think that's the way to get ahead in life. Right? Your honor, remember in the first lecture I said, your honor, your character, your integrity is the most important asset in your life? Yeah, because other people are depending on you to be honorable and charitable and so forth, and trustworthy. And fraud demolishes trust. Now, there's another criticism I often hear of advertising, and that's that they make you buy things you don't need or want. They'll say, well, advertising makes you buy things you don't need or want. This is the one I get the most angry about, because it is so blatantly wrong. Now, think about that story. These are people that say these things that have never been in business, never paid for advertising. They don't have a clue what they're talking about. Yet they think they're experts on the economics of advertising. If you look at new products that hit the market, statistically, they're heavily advertised in the first 3 or 4 years. Why? Because they're trying to tell the consumer, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here, and all this clutter of all this stuff, there's a billion things to look at, I got to stand out for a little bit so you see I'm here. Are you with me? And they'll invest heavily in advertising just to make people aware of their options. What is interesting is that most new products will fail, like 90% of them will fail in the first 3 to 5 years of being on the market, when they're most heavily advertised. And if you go out another 5 years, half of the remaining will not be there 5 years later. See, advertising can't make you buy anything. They can't do it. They don't have a loaded M16 to your forehead. They don't say, buy or we're going to shoot you. You got to say, we're here, we're here, we're here. Here's what we can offer you. And they make it tempting. They may try to entice you. Yeah, but they can't make you do anything. Let me give you an example. Let's say you want a package of Oreo cookies. And you go to Giant grocery store across University Mall. You go down that cookie aisle. I will promise you, there's about 500 different brands of cookies in that aisle. And you're going to walk past Chips Ahoy. You're going to walk past vanilla wafers. You're going to walk past all these different types of cookies, aren't you? And then you're going to grab Oreo cookies and go to the cash register. You just walk past about 500 different types of cookies that have advertised for you. Why didn't you pick any of that stuff up? You wanted it. How come they didn't make you buy that other stuff? Because you just didn't want it. You said, I wanted Oreo cookies. All right. Maybe if there's a new product, a new cookie, and they might say, hey, we're here. You might say, hey, let's try that. See, you walk by thousands of things that are advertised in front of you every day. You don't buy them. So if they can make you buy things you don't need or want, no advertised product can go broke. Because they've got you in this kind of Svengali hex, you know, they got you brainwashed, you will buy, you will buy. You said, then why does 90% of the new products fail when they're most heavily advertised? These people have no answer because they've never been in business and they sure as hell don't know anything about economics. So let's take it. When people say, well, you're going to buy things you don't need, don't want, I always then do a little intellectual jujitsu with them. I said, well, how do you know what consumers you've never met need and want? Advertisers are trying to figure this out. They're competing to try to figure out what's important to you that we have for you that we can communicate to you about. Are you with me? Then you say, yeah, but they're buying things they don't need and want. Say, okay, tell me their names. Tell me their kids' birthdays. You tell me what they need and want. You tell me what you know. And they're going to get the dumb look right back at you. They're going to say, well, I don't know what you're talking about. So you don't know what you're talking about. Right? These are institutions that are designed for a certain reason. Transmit and communicate information. Now, one last point on this one. I want to finish up on this part of this. To show you the stupidity of they're going to make you buy things you don't need and don't want, even though they presume they know. But they don't know. They don't have a clue. Let me give you a couple examples. One of the largest failures in advertising history was the Ford Edsel. How many have heard of the Edsel? Oh, God, you're all so young. In the 1950s, Ford Motor Company made this car called the Edsel. And it was kind of universally thought of as the most ugliest car ever made. I know it's all subjective, but millions of consumers said, that's the ugliest thing I've ever laid my eyes on. At the same time, they couldn't sell more than a few hundred of these things. They had made tens of thousands of these Edsels. It was just an ugly design on a car. They tried to sell these things through advertising. They tried every trick, every gimmick you could possibly imagine. They spent tens of millions of dollars on just the advertising to try to get people to buy the Edsel, and they kept beating them over the head. You want to buy the Edsel, you've got to buy the Edsel. It's a great car, it's a great car. Everyone kept looking at the car and said, I don't want that car. I'd never get caught dead in that car. So then Ford started putting the bikini models on the car and in the car and saying, see, look, this is an Edsel. People looked at that and said, the girl is pretty. The car is even uglier now. It's like it's something to compare it against. If I were in that car, that girl would not be in that car with me. No one will be in this car. That was that atrocious. Ford didn't get the message until they were almost going to bankruptcy over the Edsel. They were really told that you can make people buy things if you just push enough advertising at them. And eventually they got the message and said, we're not going to lose the whole company over the damn Edsel. Stop making the Edsel. Cut our losses, get it over with. Stop all this crap. This is a Ford Edsel. Disaster in advertising history. Now, the biggest disaster of all is something called New Coke. How many have heard of New Coke? Or kind of your parents' generation or generation? No. Let me tell you a little story, because this is personal to your professor. When I was in high school, I was assistant manager of a large grocery store that was in the biggest chain of private independent stores in Kansas City. And I went straight from high school right to the night shift, and I was the assistant manager of the night shift. And I came into work one day, and here was the guy from Coca-Cola rep, who had all the baskets lined up, and he was taking all the 2 liters off the shelf of Coca-Cola, put them in baskets to wheel them out. Now, whenever you see something like a representative pulling their product out of a retail store, something's wrong, something happened wrong. Either they said, oh, it causes cancer, get it off, or maybe there was defective product, maybe they found broken glass in the bottles, they take them all off, lawsuits. There's a reason, there's reason they're pulling our product off. So he's pulling all the 2 liters off, and I walk in, I said, what's going on? And he says, he goes, we're getting rid of this stuff. I actually asked him, does it cause cancer or something like that? And he said, no. I said, did they find like a mouse in one of the bottles? Pepsi found a mouse in one of their bottles one time. And I said, did that happen to you guys? And he said, no. He goes, we're just not going to make Coca-Cola anymore. And I looked at this guy. I said, do you work with Pepsi? And he goes, no, I'm Coke. He had Coke regional representative. And he goes, well, who are you? I said, I'm the assistant manager of the store. I'm the night manager, but assistant manager overall. And he said, he goes, no, we're getting rid of Coca-Cola. And I said, you're getting rid of Coca-Cola? That sounds stupid to me. I told him, I said, Coca-Cola is the greatest product in the history of the world. And billions of people around this planet have tried Coca-Cola. I said, you go into Australia, in the outback, with Aborigines, they know what Coke is. You go into the Amazon, and the tribal people, they know what Coca-Cola is. They may not know much else about the outside world, but they know what Coca-Cola is. And I said, this is the greatest product in the history of the world. It made you the biggest soft drink company in the world. Why would you get rid of Coca-Cola? He said, because we have a new Coke. It's called New Coke. And he showed me, a bottle of the New Coke. He said, we're going to put all this in place of the old Coke. And I said, well, wait a minute. So you're not going to make this stuff you're taking out? He said, never again. We changed the recipe. I said, well, what happens when my customers taste the new stuff, but maybe they don't like it and they want the old stuff? How do I get the old stuff? Is there some special ordering mechanism we have to go through, special requests, that kind of stuff? He said, no, this is never going to be made again. We're never making Coca-Cola again. I said, I don't, it does not compute. I cannot understand why you wouldn't make Coca-Cola. And he said, well, he goes, we know that New Coke will surpass the sales of Old Coke and will crush Pepsi. I said, how do you know that? He said, we did taste test surveys. I said, but have you done taste test surveys with my customers here? Because that's the only customers I care about. Who shops here? He said, no. He goes, we've done our surveys, we've tested the recipe. And then he showed me, he had right there, a portfolio that was about a little over a foot of glossies, like a 3-ring binder. And he's flipping it. He goes, this is our advertisements for New Coke. And he goes, we've got over $1 billion in this stack right here. He said, we're going to be advertising in the Super Bowl. He's flipping the pages, trying to convince me. We're going to have advertisement in the World Series. We're going to have advertisement in the Olympic Games. We're going to have buy one, get one free. We're going to send out 10 million free 2 liters. He's flipping page after page after page after page. He goes, we got over $1 billion in our ad budget for New Coke. I said, I see you're going to spend a lot of money to promote New Coke. I said, but where do I get this stuff you're taking out? because I might need to get that. And he goes, you don't understand, we're never going to make that again. And I said, I just don't understand you. This doesn't make any sense to me. And he looked at me and he said, how old are you? I said, I'll be 17 next month. And he said, so you're still in high school? I said, yeah, I'm a high school kid. I said, but I've got enough qualifications to run one of the largest stores in the city. My boss chose me for this. I said, I'm doing my job here, and I'm asking, where are you going to get this? And he looked at me, and he held up that portfolio, and he goes, I got $1 million that says you're wrong, and you're just a dumb, stupid high school kid. I'll never forget those words, because that came back to haunt him. Because I came back to haunt him. So I said, all right, your company, if you're throwing it away, I don't know what to tell you. So that evening shift came in, and I called all the stockers over the intercom. I said, okay, everybody take the break together. All of us together. So I went and I bought 2 of the 2 liters of new Coke. I bought a package of styrofoam cups, and I bought a bag of ice. I filled all the cups with ice, and I said, let's try this new Coca-Cola. Let's just see. And I remember the reaction everyone's face had when they sipped it. They were like spitting it out. They were like, this isn't Coke. This is nasty. This is like bad Pepsi. And I tasted it, and I'm a Coke guy. I'm a Coke guy. Passionately Coke guy. I tasted it, I said, this is bad Pepsi in a Coke bottle. If I wanted bad Pepsi, I would have got good Pepsi in a Pepsi bottle. So I went right back out to the guy who was putting the 2 liters of new Coke on the shelf, putting the signs, okay, new Coke, da, 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 da. I went and I said, hey, buddy. I said, I know you're taking this stuff out, but I want to buy it all and bring it back. And I want to get as much of this stuff as possible. Because we just tasted. I had 15 stockers tell me, this is nasty, they don't want it, they will never drink it again. I don't know what your taste test is, I don't know what your advertising is, but I want to get the old Coke. And he says, I tried to tell you, we're never making that again. I said, well, that's your funeral, not mine, man. I said, I don't know, I'm just a dumb, stupid high school kid. You seem to know so much. And he goes, look, it's $1 billion. With $1 billion, we can make anybody buy anything. That's exactly his words to me. Well, here we go. A couple months go down. A lot of people tried it, experienced that revulsion immediately. And all my customers were saying, can you get the old stuff? No, ma'am, we can't get the old stuff because they don't even make it anymore. Why don't they make it anymore? I don't know. You've got to ask Coca-Cola that, right? Of course, they quit buying it. We quit buying new Coke. And about 2-3 months, maybe 3 months was when the final deal came by. I come in, same guy, taking all the new Coke off the shelf, putting it into baskets. I knew exactly what happened because they didn't sell anything after that. And I went up to him. I said, hey, buddy. I said, what's this stuff cause cancer? No, it just didn't sell very well. I said, right. I said, but you had $1 billion, so I kept doing this to him. You have $1 billion. Remember the billion, that big stock you showed me? Oh, we're going to be in the Super Bowl. We're going to be in the World Series. We're going to be in the Olympic Games. Oh, yeah, we can make anybody buy. I said, remember that? I think I heard that from you about 3 months ago. Oh, yeah, we were wrong. It didn't turn out that way. And then I looked at him, and I said, I was the dumb, stupid high school kid. But I didn't spend $1 billion on wasted advertising by changing the recipe of the greatest selling product in the history of the world. I said, you pulled Coke off the market for 3 months. Pepsi took 20% of all of your sales, and then you gave them bad Coke. I said, and you spent $1 billion to do that. I said, I'm not a guy that lost $1 billion for my company, plus lost sales, plus. I said, I guess the dumb, stupid high school kid wasn't so stupid. I said, now who's the stupid idiot? The guys who think they can just make you buy things because they got this mind control. If they hit you with enough ads, you're going to buy it. Look, here's where CC rule. I explained this to this guy. Once someone experiences something, you can't erase that from their memory. They experienced it. And any advertising you're throwing at them just pisses them off even more. So I said, so what are you going to do? You taking this off? So I said, you guys shutting down Coca-Cola? He goes, oh no. He goes, we're coming back with the original recipe. And on the label, they put Coca-Cola Classic. The original recipe. And so he says, no, we're coming back with all the old stuff. And I said, listen, I may be young, but I know about customers. And I know how you make your customers happy. You don't take what they're buying away from them, roll the dice on some new recipe, and then think you're going to brainwash them into that recipe. And I pointed out to him, I said, you never mess with success. I said, this is the first rule of business. You don't screw around with what's making you your money. I said, if you want to make an extra product, Coke wants a separate Coke, put a different label on it, call it something else, call it some other kind of cola under, Coca-Cola manufacturer, and then ask for some shelf space. And if people buy it, like it, and it expands, then you take more shelf space. So you don't take your product off the market and then roll the dice on some taste test. And that, I kept doing this, and that. I said, you remember that? He goes, oh God, that was such a mistake. I said, multi-billion-dollar mistake that almost put Coca-Cola into bankruptcy. I said, don't ever mess with success. Don't ever mess with Coca-Cola, because I like Coke. I can go 3 months without regular Coca-Cola, right? So, yeah. So they can't make you buy it. Yeah, they might entice you. You might say, well, try it, see. Once you experience, you can't erase experience. No matter advertising can erase experience. Important lessons in business. Don't treat your customers like they're idiots. You're there to serve them. You got to figure out what they want, not what you think you can push on them. Okay, now I want to shift gears just a little bit. I always like to turn tables. Whenever people attack the private sector, I have to go after them. I always counterpunch in economics. And the criticisms against advertising, which are all fraudulent in their nature, they're either assuming information's free, you can brainwash people, all that nonsense. Somehow when it gets to politics, they have no criticisms of advertising. And I've got a lot of criticisms of advertising in politics. So we're going to look at political versus private markets and show you how rules govern behavior. In the private sector, if you false advertise with bait and switch tactics, it's punished. You go to prison and you go to bankruptcy. In politics, don't politicians bait and switch their voters? Don't they make promises they know they can't keep? How many have heard politicians make promises only to later break their promises? Yeah, everybody in this room. Now, have you ever seen a politician go to jail for breaking their campaign promises? Never one in American history. I want one of them to go to prison one time. Just once. Just one. See, we know that if Walmart advertises a price, we don't let them change their mind during the sale. Right? They don't say TV's $99.99, then you get there and they're $300.99. We changed our mind. You would know that would be fraud. That'd be bait and switch. Are you with me? But we let politicians change their mind. They'll say, what conditions change? Would you let a private company just say, well, conditions change, so I can't honor my prices that I promised? No, because you know they're greedy and they're gonna screw you if they can get away with that. Politicians are greedy and they will screw you on your vote, don't they? Don't they bait you for the vote? Vote for me, I'm going to give you this. Then after the election, they might renege on the deal and not give you what they promised. And they'll say, well, you can't hold me accountable to that. Well, yeah, that means you're going to be committing fraud. And they do bait and switch tactics. Rules are very different. Bait and switch in politics often rewarded instead of punished. Number two, in the private sector, we individualize our purchases. We buy what we want, and we walk by the things we don't want. But in politics, you have bundled transactions. Let me give you an example of a bundled transaction. Let's say I have a store. And I say, if you want to buy a loaf of bread in my store, you've got to buy a package of diapers, 5 cans of dog food, you can't afford it. You might say, well, all I want's the bread. And I said, no, you can't buy the bread unless you buy the baby diapers, the dog food, and pork and beans. You might say, I don't even have a child. Why would I want baby diapers? I don't even have a dog. Why would I be buying dog food? And I don't even like pork and beans. So why should I buy all this other garbage to get the one thing I want? As a consumer, what would you probably do? Turn around and go to the next store. That's going to let you buy what you want to buy and walk by 240,000 other things in that store that you don't want to buy. That keeps your customer happy. You get to only buy what you're going in there to buy for. You're not forced to try to buy things you don't want. But in politics, when you make a vote, if you think about your vote, you're bundling all of the policies together. So you might like a candidate who you might say, I like their economics, but I don't like their social policy, or I don't like their environmental issues, or this and that. Okay, can you separate your vote out and say, well, I'm going to vote, part of my vote for this for your policies, but I'm going to give your opponent the rest of the vote. Can you do that? No. It's all or nothing, and they know that. They know it's an all or nothing bundled transaction. This is why you're never going to be happy in politics. You'll be happy going down to the grocery store. You will never be happy in politics. Because sometimes you got to vote for people. You say, I like these things about their policies, and I hate these things about their policies, but it's the lesser of two evils, because you're always getting something you don't like. You go into a business, you go into Kohl's, or you go into Walmart, you buy what you want, you don't buy what you want. That's why you're going to be happy there, not in politics. We know in the private sector, every penny counts towards profits. And firms are trying to maximize that, trying to make as many people as happy as possible to bring them do, re, mi, or me. Money, money, money. I think Mr. Krabs, the SpongeBob used to say. Didn't he do that? Want me to hear that? You want to hear me do Mr. Krabs? Oh, SpongeBob. Money, 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 money. I love Mr. Krabs, my favorite character. Every penny counts towards profits. If you alienate half of your customers, don't you alienate half of your potential profits? Yeah, you go into business, you don't want to piss anybody off. You want their money. You want them to keep being happy here. But in politics, not every vote counts. Now, why do I say this? Because we're a winner-take-all electoral type system. See, contrary to all the propagandistic crap that they teach in government and public administration, not every vote counts. Only the votes for the winning candidate count. The votes for the loser don't count. Do you know why they don't count? It is not a proportional parliamentary system. Whoever gets the election wins, they get all of it. Does the guy that got 48% of the vote, do they get 48% of that person in office? No. It's all or nothing. It was designed that way. First across the finish line that reached the threshold wins. People that voted for the opposition don't get anything. Are you with me? Only the votes for the winning candidate are actually registering there. Votes for the losing candidates, if they do, show up. Very different. So now here, these people have every incentive to do bait and switch, because all you got to do is get a bare majority. You'll bait the other side of the political spectrum, make promises you know you're not going to keep, try to get past the 50% plus one line, and then just commit fraud and say, well, I changed my mind after the election. And no one goes to jail. That's what's stunning to me. In the private sector, the return policy is very easy or very generous. Retailers don't want consumers to be stuck with defective products and mistakes, because they don't want you to blame the retailer who didn't make the product but just sold it. So if you go to Target and you buy a TV, and you get it home, you plug it in, you say, this doesn't look all that good. How long does it take you to get it back down to the place to get your money back? 5 minutes, an hour? Take it, put it back in the box, go back, get your money. They'll undo the transaction. They'll compete over a return policy. A lot of places say you don't even need receipts, just come back with goods, we'll give you money. Which is odd, because you could have stole it, come back and get cash for it, right? They're gonna make it very easy. They don't want you to hold them responsible for defective products. So where do defective products go? Go back to the manufacturer. The retailer reimburses you, and then the manufacturer reimburses the retailer. Are you with me? Those who make defective products are gonna pay for it, not the customer making the bad decision. So you can undo your mistakes very easily. Now try to undo a mistake on an election. What's the return policy in politics? What's the election cycle? Depending on the office, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. Now there is recall, which happens about once every 20 years at the state level. That's a whole brand new re-election. Are you with me? Notice now you got millions of people involved, millions of dollars to have a whole brand new election. Doesn't happen very often. So whenever you elect someone, and then you later regret it, you say, uh-oh, I got buyer's remorse here. You gotta wait, don't you? You gotta wait till the next one to undo your mistake. Could be 2, 4, 6 years. They're gonna work on your amnesia. Now, do a thought experiment. What if I said, Rustisi passes a law that says you can't take defective products back to where you bought them for 2 years, 4 years, and 6 years. You have to wait that long to undo the transaction. Would you be happy? All your mistakes would show up in the garage somewhere, collecting dust, maybe out with the trash. All right? What would happen to the quality of products across the economy? It would be reduced to the lowest common denominator. You get garbage then. Guess what's happening in politics? You reduce the lowest common denominator. That's why you get garbage in politics. I just want them by the same rules. Right? We hold business people up to high moral standards, which we should. Because we live in a world of greed. We don't want people to cheat and lie and deceive. Well, guess what? We live in a world of political greed, where people lie, cheat, and deceive. I just want to hold them accountable. In the private sector, people acquire information to help them avoid mistakes. Now, why is that? Because if you make a mistake, you're bearing the burden of that. So if you buy a pair of shoes, don't you try them on before you walk out of the store? See if they fit? You buy a suit, you try it on, see if it fits? Things of this nature. Because you don't want to have to go back and undo it. So it makes sense to acquire information up to where the benefits are equal to the cost. In politics, and we're going to get back to this in the last week of the course, so make a note, this comes back in the last week of the course. There's a concept called rational ignorance. Rational ignorance is when it's smart to be ignorant. Oxymoron here. Why is it smart to be ignorant? Because additional information will not help you in any way. The benefit is too small relative to the cost. So most people in politics are ignorant about most things in politics. That's just scientific fact. Why do I say that? We're in a university. We're all highly educated. We're in the information age. We're 10 minutes away from Death Star in Washington, D.C. Death Star, across the Potomac. We should be well informed about most things, shouldn't we? I always tell students, name me 10 bills in the Congress and the various committees and tell me what's in that legislation. You wouldn't even know if you read it because it's thick legalese. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of pages of technical nuances of changing the federal rules, regulations, taxes, and other things. Trust me, I worked at a think tank where I had to undecipher one particular bill. It took 4 months and a whole research division to take one bill and untangle it, try to figure out what the hell was in the bill. They have committees of lawyers that are putting in their things in different committees as it's being marked up in Congress. So I say, can you name 10 things that Congress is actually voting on? What's in those bills? Do you think the people in Congress read the bills they're voting on? There's not enough time and enough lives to do this. They would be literally reading tens of thousands of pages of thick legalese that they don't even understand. See, what they need to know is this provision in this bill for my interest group? The rest of the bill they don't care about. That's what they're selling to their special interest group. And so most people in most of politics don't know what they're voting on. Most people can't tell you who the representatives are. Most people can't tell you how they vote on various bills. And the people who are voting on those bills can't tell you what's in those bills. We think we control something. Are you with me so far? You say, this is not a good prognosis. This is not a good prognosis for democracy. This is a really terrible. And the reason why you have this is because information is not free. So in politics, it's not worth your time to think about it. Let's say we did a referendum on voting, should we have nuclear power plants built in Virginia? And let's say they're going to let all the voters make that decision. How many people are going to go through all the information to acquire to be knowledgeable on nuclear power? Get a PhD in nuclear engineering? How many are going to do that? No one will do that, just to go cast one vote. Now somebody else can cancel your vote, can't they? Yeah, that don't know anything about nuclear power. Race to the bottom. And that's called politics. In the private sector, you gather information to help you avoid mistakes, but in politics, the mistakes are borne by everybody. And there you go, there's the issue. We're going to come back to this in massive detail last week of the course. Last thing I want to talk about today, we've got 15, 17 minutes, is speculators. This is the last of information economics, speculators. What is it that speculators do? This is another one of those things like middlemen, advertising, that people don't understand. Now, you know the old story about the king and the messenger with bad news? Now I'm going to put on my British accent. The messenger goes to the king and goes, Your Majesty, there's rebellion in the kingdom. What shall we do? And what does the king do to the messenger with the bad news? Off with his head, right? Yeah. Speculators are the messengers of scarce future information. And there are 4 functional attributes. 4 functional attributes of a profit-making speculator. Let me give you all 4, and then we're going to look at the graphics of speculation. Number 1, speculators acquire scarce information about the future. They have a comparative advantage in the production of scarce future information. That's what they do best, gather information, tell you what's coming down the road. Number 2, they stabilize price through time. They stabilize price through time. Number 3, they shift the risk liability. They shift the risk liability about uncertain future prices. They shift the risk liability about uncertain future prices from producers to themselves with a futures contract. I'll repeat all these. They shift the risk liability about uncertain future prices from producers to themselves with a futures contract. In parentheses, you could put their shock absorbers. Shock absorbers. They pull you out of what's called the hog cycle. You first observe with hogs. I'll explain that. So that's all number 3. And number 4, this allows others to pursue their comparative advantage. This allows others to pursue their comparative advantage, which is huge, absolutely huge. Now let me repeat the 4 functional attributes of profit-making speculators. Number 1, they acquire scarce information about the future. What they do best is comparative advantage. Number 2, stabilize price through time. Number 3, shift risk liability about uncertain future prices from producers to themselves with a futures contract. You could put their shock absorbers and they pull you out of what's called the hog cycle. And number 4, this allows others to pursue their comparative advantage, which is huge. Now let's walk through this. Remember on the very first day of class, I was telling you, I said, what do speculators do? I said, we're going to get to it. Well, now we're at this point. And I think I used the example, why is the price of a bushel of corn or wheat roughly the same every day of the year, give or take a few pennies? Whether you're in the middle of the harvest cycle, or whether you're in the dead of winter when nothing's being harvested. It's always roughly the same. You don't get wild volatility. It was because of profit-making speculators. Now let's walk this thing through. And I'm going to show you 2 supply and demand graphs. Here we go. Let's say we're in the corn market. And we've got a supply and demand for corn in the present, and an expectations of supply and demand for corn in the future. Let's say the market demand is the demand for corn in the present, demand for corn in the future. We'll assume the same elasticities. They don't have to be, but that just complicates it more. Now, let's say for the sake of argument, all we have are what are called spot prices. Where supply equals demand right that moment, what's the price? Are you with me? Now, let's say for the sake of argument, at harvest, in the present, the supply is this amount of quantity, right? So maybe the spot price, with no speculators, will be what? $2 a bushel. What would the actual spot price be out in Kansas or Nebraska when 1 million farmers are harvesting the same thing on the same day? If that price was what set the price that day, what would it be? Billions of pounds of excess supply all in one day, what would happen to price? It would actually be 0. Yeah. But we'll put some price there, call it $2. Now, let's say the speculator anticipates something is going to happen on the next round, round 2, that the supply is actually going to be less in the future than it is in the present. If you have the same demand in the future, what's that going to do to the spot price? It's going to raise it, right? So there's less supply in the future, and so there's a price with no speculators, maybe $6 at the spot. So you have $2 today, you're expecting $6 a year from today. Maybe there's some disease destroying the crop as you're harvesting the stuff, and say, uh-oh, next year it's going to be worse. Okay, so you got this wild volatility, $2 today, $6 a year from today on that information. Now here's what a speculator will do. If I tell you something is at a price of 2 today, you can buy it 2. You can sell it at 6 next year. What are you going to do today? You're going to buy it. You're going to buy it today. Buy low and sell high. So they're going to start taking some of this product off the market to store it. This is called storage. So what's actually sold is less than the existing supply. So they might be harvesting 1 billion bushels of wheat or corn, but what's actually sold in the open market is probably half of that, not even that. And what's that do? In the present, this raises the spot price. And this is when everyone's screaming about speculators gouging and greedy and all that. Okay, so they're storing this product off the market. Now let's say the future comes and the future supply is actually less. Well, you see, you have that reserve that you now have stored up. Can't you release it into the future? So if the future comes and there's actually less production, you've got all that inventory you've accumulated in storage, and you can now release it. So now what you can do is sell more than the actual production in the future. And when you sell high, what do you do in the price? You're pushing it downward. Now, here's where you have to understand it. A profit-making speculator buys low and sells high. Now, if you bought at $2, $3, $4, $5, and $6, let's say, and you resold it at 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, sometimes you bought low and sold high and made a profit, but then sometimes you might have bought high and sold low and took a loss. It'd be an even break-even. Are you with me? So here's what speculators do. They take a midpoint between spot and future prices here. And that midpoint's called, so there's the name of it, intertemporal equilibrium price. And it's like say $4. So what speculators will do is stabilize the price. Notice this is number 2. They're going to stabilize the price. Because without speculators, you'd have a spot price of 2 today and 6 smacking you. No shock absorber in the future. But with speculators, today the price is going to be 4 on the market, and in the future it's going to be 4 on the market. That's why the price of a bushel of wheat or corn or soybean is going to be roughly the same every day of the year, regardless of how much is being harvested in the moment of time. Does that make sense? Question. Think about this for a moment. They'll put this under contracts. They have to deliver so many thousands of bushels at that intertemporal equilibrium futures price. Now, what farmers will do is get crop insurance to ensure quantity, do futures contracts to get the price guaranteed before they ever plant the crops. Now they know what their revenues are before they ever plant in January and February. See, think about it. Would any farmer plant in January and February knowing 500,000 farmers right behind them on the same day are going to be harvesting in August? It's called guaranteed bankruptcy. No one would do it. They will get their guaranteed revenue before they actually plant the crop. So then what are they going to do? Figure out how to do it well and do it efficiently. Get the costs down and grow the food. So a farmer can then grow food for 500 other people because he's not speculating on what the future price will be at harvest time. He doesn't worry about going bankrupt at harvest time. He does what he does best, called grow food. So 500 other people don't have to ever grow any food. They can do the things they do with their life. Speculators absorb the risk. That's that third one, the shock absorbers. What does a shock absorber do to a car? It stabilizes the ride. And of course, there it is. So let me just leave you with these last few minutes here. It is greedy, profiteering speculators. You can quote me on this. Greedy, profiteering speculators that all of civilization rests on. Without them, we all die. It's just that simple. Life is not even physically possible on this planet without greedy, profiteering speculators. Because what they're doing is gathering information down the road, bringing it to you in the present so that way you can make your decisions, so they can then stabilize prices through time, and then farmers can then grow the food without worrying about bankruptcy and harvest time. And then that's what they do best, and then you do what you do best. And so this is an enormous, enormous thing. And I would venture to say not 1 in 10,000 people have even a clue of what a speculator does. Now, one last point. Most speculators in the commodities market lose money. Any given year, 80 to 90% of speculators lose money. The 10 to 20% that actually make money always consistently make more than the remainder lose, which means that creates stability. If the losses exceed the gains, then they're destabilizing things. Then you get more wild volatility. And I want to show you one last little graphic here. One last little graphic here. This is from an economist in Canada named David Jacks. He's an economic historian. And he's done this with like hundreds of different things where there was futures contracts. When you look at wheat in Berlin from 1893 to 1903, where there were futures contracts, speculative. Then between here and there, they were banned. The government of Germany said you're not allowed to speculate with the price of wheat. And then they reestablished futures contracts. He's done this for hundreds of commodities, from onions to potatoes to cotton to everything. And they have this very similar pattern. Notice, this normal, up and down, stable. But then notice this area when they could not incorporate future information. Then you get the wild volatility. These prove the point. They stabilize price through time because they're gathering future information, processing it, distributing it very efficiently, and you don't get that instability. You get instability when you cannot gather that information. Are you with me? We're going to do a little bit more on this on Wednesday. Then we'll go into brand new area of economics. It's called income determination.